Hi, everybody. Welcome again to Ivy English. I'm Bruce.
I'm Angela.
And I'm Wesley.
Now, yesterday we spent the whole time talking about Hans Christian Andersen, the most famous author from the little northern European country of Denmark.
We didn't spend the whole time talking about him. We spent half the time talking about the city where he's from.
True. And that city is Odense. And that's how we start today's lesson. And when we're finished, we have 2 days' worth of questions for you. So listen carefully. Odense, Denmark's third largest city, is best known for its status as the hometown of Hans Christian Andersen. Andersen, who lived from 1805 to 1875, was the author of many literary works, including poems, travel books, and plays. However, many of these works are primarily known to Danish audiences. It is another form of story that made Hans Christian Andersen a household name around the globe today: fairy tales. Andersen was a prolific fairy tale writer, having penned more than 150 such stories throughout his career. Most of us have likely read or been told at least one of his fairy tales, such as Thumbelina and The Little Mermaid, which have been made into successful film adaptations produced by Warner Brothers and Disney, respectively. Although it has been almost 150 years since Andersen's death, present-day visitors to Odense can still immerse themselves in his magical fairy tale world by paying a visit to the new H.C. Andersen Museum, a place dedicated to the writer in the city's historic quarter. This uniquely designed building is approximately 5,600 square meters and features a cultural center with children as the target audience and a magical garden surrounding it. The museum exhibits were created through a partnership of the museum authorities and a group of 12 artists. They offer visitors a unique dive inside the mind of the great writer, with an experience that incorporates light, sound, color, and one-of-a-kind architecture. Odense certainly has many other interesting historical sites to visit, but the new H.C. Andersen Museum really is an unmissable experience for locals and tourists alike.
Okay, so here's a concrete reason to go there. They've got this new museum that is very cool. Going back to the beginning of our article, it says Odense, Denmark's third largest city. So we find out that Odense is not some small town backwater. It's quite a large city. And it's best known for its status as the hometown of Hans Christian Andersen, which we found out yesterday. So this is just connecting us up to yesterday's article.
好，所以呢，这个 Odense 这个地方呢，同位语告诉你，它是丹麦的第3大城。那 is best known for 它最知名的是什么呢？是它的 status， 它的地位是什么的地位呢？它是作为一个安德森他的 hometown， 他的故乡的这样的一个地位，它是以这个最为出名。
Andersen, who lived from 1805 to 1875, was the author of many literary works, including poems, travel books, and plays. So he didn't just write children's stories, but other literary works as well. Poems are pieces of poetry, travel books. By the 19th century, it was quite easy to get around Europe. The train systems were being developed, horses and carriages and so on. You could really get around, and travel books were popular to introduce faraway places to people who had the time and money to travel, and plays.
OK， 所以呢，这个安德森呢，这个地方它其实它是同位语，但是它其实是一个关系代名词子句，一个非限定的关系代名词子句，增加一些资讯给你。所以他这里告诉你说，安德森怎么样呢？他是从1805年活到1875年，所以活了70年。那他是 这位他是一个作者，是什么的作者呢？是很多 literary works 文学作品的作者。那这些文学作品呢 including 包括了诗 poems 就是诗，然后呢 travel books 旅游书籍，那个时候旅游书籍写得好的话，那当然也是一种文学作品啊。还有呢 plays 戏剧啊，所以他其实写了很多文学作品。
However, many of these works are primarily known to Danish audiences. So the poems, travel books, and plays, I didn't know he had written any of these. They're not as popular or as famous as his incredibly famous children's stories.
But, the man had to make a living.
And maybe he just was interested in writing these things in addition to the children's stories.
I mean, I don't think he set out to become a famous children's book writer. I think he was just writing stuff that was interested in him, in what he was interested in. And then these things just sort of took off unexpectedly.
Yeah, 所以呢，因为他其实也是很有才华，他写了很多东西，大概他喜欢写的其实很多东西，只不过后来就是以儿童文学成为家喻户晓的人物。所以这里讲到说，我们前面讲到他写的这些书、这些作品，例如说诗啊、旅游书籍啊、戏剧等等的 ，are primarily 主要的是 known to 为谁所知呢？为这些丹麦的读者所知。好，所以丹麦人会熟悉，非常知道说这个Andersen 他也是个很有名的作家，写了戏剧，写了诗等等的。但换句话说，主要是丹麦人知道，其他国家的人可能比较不知道。
So Danish audiences know his poems, his travel books, and his plays, but it is another form of story that made Hans Christian Andersen a household name around the globe today. If something makes you a household name, it means everyone knows your name. Like Michael Jackson.He's a household name. Everybody in the world, if you say Michael Jackson, they're like, oh, yeah, beat it. They're immediately talking about his work. They know who he is. And so fairy tales made Hans Christian Andersen a household name.
我们刚刚看到说这句话，他说 it is another， 这是一种强调句型，是另外一种 form of story， 就是这个故事的形式 that made 使得 Andersen 成为一个 household name。A household name 就是一个家喻户晓的名字，而且是 around the globe today， 是全球啊，都是一个家喻户晓的名字。今天在全世界，你讲 Andersen， 大概大家都知道。那到底是哪一种 form of story 呢？冒号告诉你，就是 fairy tales， 也就是说，它是以童话故事这种形式的故事，使得它成为一个全球家喻户晓的名字。
Andersen was a prolific fairy tale writer, having penned more than 150 such stories throughout his career. So it maybe wasn't such a sideline for him. He did a lot. 150 stories is not a small amount.
And he must have been rewarded for them, which kept his interest alive and wanting to write more.
Being paid does tend to do that for you.
Yeah.
It happens.
所以呢，他是一位，那这个是很常见的英文的一个词类搭配 ，a prolific writer 就是一个多产的作家 ，prolific 就是 producing many works， 他是一位很多产的 fairy tale writer， 多产的童话故事作家。然后呢，后面一个分词告诉你怎么个多产法呢 ？Having penned， 他写了 pen 这个字当动词的话，就是 write 或者是 compose。他写了超过150个 such stories， 就是 fairy tales。那 throughout his career， throughout 就是 from beginning to end of something， 所以他的生涯呢，总共写了150个这种童话故事。这句话意思就是这样子。
Most of us have likely read or been told at least one of his fairy tales, such as Thumbelina and The Little Mermaid,which have been made into successful film adaptations produced by Warner Brothers and Disney, respectively. So you might not know Andersen, but you know his stories because they're in the media. They're in movies, they're in television cartoons, they're in school plays, and so on and so on. And Warner Brothers, B-R-O-S-D-N, is short for Brothers. Warner Brothers is a producer of films.And, of course, Disney also, besides Disney World and Disneyland, they also make a lot of movies. And notice how they write this, such as Thumbelina and The Little Mermaid, produced by Warner Brothers and Disney, respectively. That means Thumbelina was produced by Warner Brothers, because that's the first. And then the second and last is The Little Mermaid was developed or produced by Disney. That's what respectively means. The first one of two things is matched with the first one of two other things, and so on.
好，所以我们可以看到他说 many of us 我们很多人呢 likely 很有可能 have likely 就是很可能曾经 read 就是读过或者 been told 或者别人跟我们说过这个故事，所以我们可能读过或听过 at least 至少 one of his fairy tales 他写的这个童话故事我们大概听过至少一个或者读过至少一个。那例如呢这个 Thumbelina 就是拇指姑娘，然后呢还有 The Little Mermaid 小美人鱼，那 which have been made into successful film adaptations 他们都被转成 made into 转成很成功的 film adaptations 就是改编电影，换句话说这两个故事都被改编电影，而且呢非常成功。那 produced by 那这些改编的电影是由谁所发行的呢？各位看到Warner Brothers 还有这个 Disney， 重点是后面有一个是 respectively。 好 respectively 这个就是 separately 或者是 individually and in the order already mentioned， 所以是根据他所刚刚按照顺序依序的意思。那这里的顺序是什么呢？刚刚看到这两个作品的时候是先讲拇指姑娘再讲小美人鱼，所以当他讲说这两个故事被拍成电影然后 respectively 的时候呢，这个先讲的拇指姑娘呢就对应的就是这个 Warner Brothers，那后讲的第二讲的那个 The Little Mermaid 就对应这个 Disney， 所以这两个故事分别由这两个很大的公司把它转拍改编成为电影，而且非常成功。
So although it has been almost 150 years since Andersen's death, since we've gotten all those fairy tales, present-day visitors to Odense can still immerse themselves in his magical fairy tale world. So we can still experience the world that he created by doing what? By paying a visit to the new H.C. Andersen Museum, which is a place dedicated to the writer in the city's historic quarter. A quarter of a city is not literally 1/4 of it or 1/4 of it. It's just one part of the city. And so the part of the city that is historic city is the older buildings or the oldest buildings. And that's where this museum is located. So it's very convenient that you can go sightsee some buildings and then you can have lunch and then you can go to the museum.
好，那虽然呢但已经差不多150年了，就从他死后差不多150年了。那 present day 就是今天的 visitors， 今天去那里玩的人呢，到这个 Odense 这个城市去玩的人呢，还是可以 immerse themselves in， 就是沉浸于，把自己沉浸在哪里呢？在他的 magical 神奇的 fairy tale world 神话故事的世界里面。那怎么样让自己沉浸在他的神话故事世界里面呢？你可以 paying a visit to 就是 visit， 它只是比较长的说法，你是去 visit 这个 museum。 那这个 museum 其实我们第一天也有提到过，那这个 museum 是怎么样？ A place dedicated to the writer。 那这个 dedicate 这个字的用法我们昨天也讲过，就是这个专门展示专门说明或者展示这样这位作者这个 writer 的一个 museum。 那这里呢这个新的资讯是告诉我们说，在这个城市的 historic 就是历史的，它是有历史意义的或者有历史价值的。 quarter 那刚刚 Angela 老师讲，这 quarter 不是说这个城市的1/4，这 quarter 其实就是 a part of a town 或者 a city， 那 having a particular character or use， 这个地方这个城市或者这个镇的某一个部分它有很特别的一个特色，或者是有特别的用处。
So you can call it like the historical quarter, the industrial quarter,The university quarter.
所以呢你说大学区也可以用这个 quarter 这个字。好，所以我们就知道说这个你现在去这个地方，你可以到这个城市呢，你可以到这个博物馆去玩一玩。
This uniquely designed building is approximately 5,600 square meters and features a cultural center with children as the target audience and a magical garden surrounding it.Uniquely, here is the adverb, is one of a kind. There's no other building designed like this one in the whole world, and it's a pretty large building. It features a cultural center. That's what we would expect from someone who dedicated his life to the arts, with children as the target audience. And that, when I read that, I thought to myself, oh, so Disneyland.
No, just much more fun than your average museum.I have to say, when I have gone to Northern European museums that are dedicated to children, they're just way more interesting than the adult ones. They're often quite cool. So it's
really?
not, don't expect Disneyfication. European children's museums are like hands-on and interesting stuff. I mean, in my experience.
Okay. Well, this one not only has a cultural center that would refer to something usually inside of the building, but outside the building is a magical garden. And unfortunately, they don't give us any example of why.
Yeah. 好，所以呢，我们看到他这里讲说 this uniquely designed 这个很独特的设计的那这样的一个建筑物呢，大约 approximately 大概是5600平方公尺。然后呢 features 它的特色是有一个 cultural center 有一个文化中心。那 with children as the target audience target audience 就是目标观众。这个所以 with我们看到这个用法 with 后面加一个名词通常后面可以再加一个分词来修饰这个名词。那在这里呢是 with 加上名词之后再加一个片语来修饰这个名词。也就是说附随状况是有小孩，那这个小孩是什么东西呢？这里告诉你是 as the target audience 就是以这些孩童为目标的观众。然后呢同时它也有一个 magical garden 有一个很神奇的花园surrounding it 围绕着这一个建筑物所以感觉起来是很有趣的。
The museum exhibits were created through a partnership of the museum authorities, the people running the museum, and a group of 12 artists. So this tells me that it could be quite interesting because when you're getting more creative people together and literally just as you increase the number of creative people, well, first, your coordination problems increase exponentially, but also the ideas and creativity increases exponentially, and you can get something really cool.
好，所以呢，这个博物馆的 exhibits 它展览，那在这个地方呢，这个我们看到后面有一个动词 were， 所以你就知道这 exhibits 它是名词，所以这里指的是这个博物馆它的展览品 were created 被创造，由谁来创造呢？ through 透过A partnership of 就是一个合伙两方的合伙，不一定两方，但通常是两方啦。那哪两方的合伙呢？第一边这个一方是 the museum authorities 就是博物馆的当局，那另外一边呢是 a group of 12 artists 有12位艺术家，所以一群12位艺术家所组成的团体，所以彼此呢这个合伙，大家共同的脑力激荡，创造出来这个 the museum exhibits。We
start this sentence with they. It refers to 前面 museum exhibits and the group of 12 artists, what they came up with, what they created. They offer visitors a unique dive inside the mind of the great writer. It's a one-of-a-kind experience where Andersen was the focus of this museum and what he created for people to enjoy.So the 12 artists thought of, let's go beyond that and show experiences that incorporate, they use or bring together light, sound, color, and one-of-a-kind, again, unique architecture, which is the design of buildings.
Yeah, 好，所以呢 they offer 他们提供 visitors 来玩的人呢一个 unique 一个独特的 dive 就是这个跳进去 a plunge into something 就你可以深入的进去，进到哪里去呢？进到这个 the mind of the great writer 就是指这个 Andersen， 所以你可以深入进入到这位伟大作家的内心。然后呢 with 一样，它是表示附随状况，它是有这么一个 experience， 你可以有这么一个经验。那这个经验呢是 incorporate 就是纳入或者结合 to become united or combined into a whole。 然后呢它这个纳入结合什么东西呢？你会发现这个显然它的展示有 light， 它一定有光 sound 有声，所以声音，所以它一定有声光效果，还有 color 还有颜色，还有呢 one of a kind architecture， 它有一个独一无二的 one of a kind 就是 unique 一个独一无二的建筑物。
Now, Odense certainly has many other interesting historical sites to visit. Like every city has historical sites to visit, but these are interesting. But the new H.C. Andersen Museum really is an unmissable experience. So it's not just interesting, it's like you have to go see it. It's a must see.
Oh, good.
OK， 所以呢这个城市当然还有很多其他的 many other 有趣的 这个 historical sites 历史的遗迹、历史的这个景点 to visit 去看啊。但是呢，这个 museum 它真的是一个 unmissable 不可错过的经验。对谁来讲呢？对于 locals 住在当地的人来讲，也是个不可错过的经验。还有呢，对于 tourists 对于游客来讲也是。那 locals and tourists alike 的用法大家注意一下 ，alike 就是都一样，这个 in the same manner。所以对 locals 来讲是这样，对 tourists 来讲也是这样。
Okay, we have some questions for you based on yesterday's and today's lessons. Number 1, what is the main purpose of the day 1 passage, the one we read yesterday?
好，所以第一天的文章主要目的是什么呢？
The answer is C, to introduce Odense, its history, and its highlights for travelers.
答案是 C， 要介绍奥登斯这个城市它的历史，还有它对游客的吸引力。
And number 2, according to the Day 1 passage, when did Odense establish its position as a business center?
好，根据第一天的文章，奥登斯何时确立了它作为一个商业中心的地位呢？
The answer is D, in the 16th century.
答案是 D， 在16世纪。
Number 3, which word is closest in meaning to prolific in the second paragraph of the Day 2 passage?
好，哪个词的意思跟第二天文章里面第二段的那个 prolific 最接近呢？
The answer is A. Productive and prolific are synonyms.
好，所以答案是 A. Productive， 就是在 productive 在这里也是指这个产量很多的。
And 4, Anna is preparing a report about Odense and Hans Christian Andersen. Which of the following information in her report should be modified? So which one might be a little bit wrong?
好，所以问题是说，这个 Anna 她正在准备一份关于奥登斯跟安徒生的报告。那在她的报告里面，以下哪一项资讯应该要修改一下？
And the answer is D. Anna said that none of Andersen's fairy tales have been made into movies, but she must have failed to read the second paragraph of the second day because at least 2 of them have been made into Disney movies.
好，所以答案应该是 D， 因为第一说安徒生的童话故事都没有被拍成电影，但是其实我们文章里面有讲到，它最少有2个故事被拍成电影，而且是被成功的改编成电影。
Okay, that's it for yesterday's and today's lesson on Hans Christian Andersen. In a couple days, we 3 will be back again for you. We'll be talking about sports and a type of equipment or a type of
practice in sports
used in some sports. Until then, bye-bye.